Let's start with something uncomfortable. If you're sitting around waiting for motivation to strike before you take action, before you get serious, before you start the project, hit the gym, fix your diet, leave the toxic relationship, or finally write that book, you're already behind. Not behind someone else, behind yourself. Because here's the thing, motivation is fleeting. It's inconsistent, unreliable, and painfully overrated. Yet we treat it like some magical force that, once it arrives, will fix everything. We treat it like motivation is the starting gun. But real life doesn't work like that. There's no booming sound, no spotlight, no music cue telling you now is the time to begin. Most of the time, the beginning looks like nothing. It feels like nothing. It's just you maybe groggy, maybe anxious, maybe totally uninspired, but still moving forward. We've been sold a fantasy. Every time you scroll past an aesthetic fitness influencer posting motivational quotes, or watch a dramatic YouTube video filled with orchestral music and slow motion transformations, you're absorbing the idea that you need to feel something huge before you can do something real. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. The people who actually get things done don't rely on motivation. They don't wait for inspiration to strike. They act anyway. And sometimes, especially when it matters most, they act without feeling like it at all. This might sting, especially if you're used to thinking of yourself as someone who's just not ready yet. But think about it. How many times have you said, I just need to get in the right mindset? How many things in your life are paused, just waiting for you to feel a spark? The uncomfortable reality is that waiting to feel motivated is often a clever disguise for procrastination. It gives us an excuse to delay. And worse, it makes us believe that delay is noble, that we're being honest or intentional. But really, we're just scared. We're avoiding the work because the work is uncomfortable. The truth is, it always is. So, what happens when you stop waiting to feel like doing something and just do it? That's what this essay is about. It's not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm not here to pump you up with cliches or slap a quote on your pain and tell you that you're doing great. I'm here to challenge your entire framework for how you think change actually happens. Because if you're still hoping that motivation will save you, it's time to wake up. The people who are winning, who are really winning, not just performing success for social media, are the ones who learn to move without needing to feel moved. They learned to act even when every cell in their body was screaming to stay in bed, stay safe, stay small. That's where we begin, with that choice. Not the comfortable one, but the necessary one. Somewhere along the way, motivation became a kind of religion. We don't call it that, but look closely, it has all the traits. It's built on belief, ritual, worship, and even guilt. We gather around self-help books, TED Talks, and YouTube compilations like their scripture. We look to motivational speakers the way ancient people looked to oracles, hoping they'll deliver some divine insight that changes everything. And when we don't feel fired up, we feel like we've sinned. We've failed. We're lazy, broken, undisciplined. We think something is wrong with us. This obsession didn't appear out of nowhere. It was built, sold, and scaled. The personal development industry, worth billions of dollars, runs on the promise that if you just find the right mindset, everything else will click. If you can just get the motivation, you'll finally become the version of yourself you dream about. You'll rise at 5 a.m., journal with perfect handwriting, crush your workouts, start the business, and become untouchable. And if that's not happening, well, then you must not want it badly enough. That's the quiet cruelty of motivational culture. It blames you when things don't change. It whispers that the reason your life is still messy or your dreams are still distant is because you're not aligned, not vibrating high, not in flow. It makes you think the problem is internal, emotional, maybe even spiritual, but rarely does it tell the truth. That change is about boring, ugly repetition. That it's built on tiny decisions made when you least feel like making them. That it's about doing the thing you don't want to do at the time you don't want to do it for the 1,000th time in a row. Look, I'm not saying motivation is worthless. It has its place. It can be a beautiful spark. It can give you momentum. But a spark is not a fire. And relying on motivation to carry you is like building a house out of fireworks. Flashy, exciting, but gone in seconds. Real change, lasting progress, the kind of life that actually transforms, that comes from something sturdier, something quieter, discipline, systems, commitment, and most of all, identity. Not what you feel like doing, but who you decide you are over and over again. But the cult of motivation doesn't want you to know that. Because if you believe that all you need is another hit of inspiration, another quote, another video, another book, then you'll keep coming back. You'll keep buying, and you'll keep waiting. That's the real danger here. Motivation culture teaches us to wait for an emotional green light. But often life doesn't give you that. You'll get red lights, dead batteries, days when everything feels dull. And that's when the winners separate themselves, not because they feel better, but because they move anyway. So maybe it's time to stop asking, how can I get motivated? And start asking a much scarier question. What would I do if I knew motivation was never coming? Here's the funny thing about motivation. The more you rely on it, the weaker it gets. Like a muscle that atrophies from disuse. Your ability to act without feeling inspired fades if you always wait to feel ready. That's the trap. The more you expect to feel excited before you move, the more powerless you become on the days when you don't. And let's be honest, those days are most of them. You know this already. You've lived it. You've had mornings where you woke up pumped to crush your to-do list, hit the gym, eat clean, or finally open that intimidating document sitting in your laptop. But then the next morning comes, and that energy is gone. Not only gone, but replaced with resistance, fatigue, maybe even dread. So what do? You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, and that turns into next week, then next month. Before you know it, you're back in the same place you swore you'd never be again, wondering what happened. What happened is simple. You built your behavior around a feeling, and feelings are liars. They change with weather, sleep, blood sugar, mood swings, distractions, Instagram scrolls, and someone else's bad attitude bleeding into yours. If your action depends on your emotional state, you're not in control. You're at the mercy of 1,000 tiny variables that you can't predict or regulate. And worse, every time you don't act because you don't feel like it, you reinforce that behavior loop. You teach your brain, if I don't feel good, I don't have to try. And the brain loves comfort. It eats that message up. That's why motivation doesn't just fail to carry you. It trains you to fail. It tells you that effort should feel good, that struggle should be exciting, that discipline should be romantic. But the truth is it's not. Sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it's so soul-crushingly tedious that you can't believe you're doing it again. But if you do it anyway, something strange happens. Your confidence grows. Not because you felt unstoppable, but because you proved you could keep going even when you didn't. That's what discipline actually is. Not a feeling, not a mindset, not a magical 5 a.m. ritual that only elite people possess. It's just a decision repeated until it becomes part of who you are. It's dragging yourself through a workout when your body says no. It's writing one sentence when you feel like throwing your laptop out the window. It's picking the healthy meal when your cravings are screaming louder than your goals. It's the small, quiet defiance of your comfort zone, over and over, until one day, that resistance doesn't control you anymore. See, you don't need motivation to become unstoppable. You need evidence. Evidence that you can show up anyway. Evidence that your actions don't have to wait for your feelings to cooperate. That's what builds confidence. That's what builds momentum. And ironically, that's when motivation sometimes shows up after you've already moved. Because it sees you taking action and it wants to come along for the ride. But if you sit around waiting for it to knock first, you'll be stuck forever. Let's talk about one of the most seductive lies we tell ourselves. I'm just not ready yet. It sounds smart, doesn't it? Responsible, measured, like you're being intentional with your time and energy. You're not procrastinating, you're preparing. You're not afraid, you're just waiting for the right moment. Maybe you're telling yourself that you'll start the business when the economy improves. You'll get serious about your health once you're less stressed. You'll write the book after you take one more course. You'll leave the toxic relationship when the timing is better. But let's call it what it is: hesitation. Fear. A stall tactic dressed up as wisdom. The truth is, no one ever feels truly ready. Not the successful people, not the confident people, not even the ones you admire most. Ask anyone who's built something meaningful, and they'll probably tell you they started before they felt ready. Because readiness, as we imagine it, doesn't exist. It's not a finish line you cross or a magic switch that flips. It's a fantasy, a mental safety net that tells us we can avoid discomfort if we just wait long enough. But in reality, waiting almost always means wasting. Not reflecting, not preparing, just avoiding. You don't get more ready by doing nothing. You get ready by starting messy, by failing, by figuring it out in motion. Readiness doesn't come before the action. It's born from the action. The person who trains every day doesn't feel ready before the first workout. They become someone who's always becoming ready. The artist doesn't feel inspired before the first brushstroke. They begin, and the inspiration meets them on the canvas. The entrepreneur doesn't wait for confidence. They step into risk, and confidence grows in the discomfort. Here's the scary part. If you wait to feel ready, you might never start at all. Readiness is comfortable. Action is not. But comfort never built anything worth having. Every meaningful transformation in your life, every major leap forward, probably came from a moment when you weren't ready, but jumped anyway. It felt like chaos. It felt like fear. But it was real. And that's what makes it powerful. Because courage doesn't happen when you feel ready. It happens when you act anyway. We love to imagine our future selves as these perfect, evolved versions of us. More disciplined, more focused, more prepared. But that person doesn't appear overnight. You have to build them brick by brick, day by day. And you don't start building once you're ready. You start building because you realize the longer you wait, the more time you're giving away to a version of yourself that doesn't exist. So if you're sitting there wondering when you'll be ready, let me save you the suspense. You won't. Not in the way you think. But that doesn't mean you can't begin. In fact, it's the exact reason you must. Because the longer you wait for readiness, the longer you stay stuck in the loop of almost. And life doesn't reward almost. It rewards action. That here's something nobody teaches you in school, but it should be on every classroom wall. You don't become the person you want to be by waiting to feel like them. You become that person by acting like them before you believe you are. Identity isn't something that floats down from the sky and lands on your shoulders one morning. It's not discovered. It's decided. You choose it. You claim it. And then you build evidence for it, one choice at a time. This might sound weird at first because we're so used to defining ourselves by how we feel. If you feel tired, you say, I'm lazy. If you feel overwhelmed, you say, I can't handle this. If you feel uncertain, you say, this just isn't me. But that's backwards. Identity shouldn't flow from emotion. It should flow from action. You aren't lazy just because you feel tired. You're lazy if you consistently choose not to move despite having the ability to. You're not disciplined because you always feel focused, but disciplined because you stick to your plan, especially when you don't. That's where real transformation happens, not in motivation highs or motivational rock bottoms, but in the daily decision to act in alignment with who you want to become instead of who you feel like today. Want to be a writer? Don't wait to feel like one. Sit down and write, even if it's one sentence. Want to be fit? Show up to the workout, even if it's a bad one. Want to be a better friend, partner, leader, entrepreneur? Then act like someone who already is. Your brain learns from what you do. So every time you act like the person you're trying to become, you're training your mind to believe, this is who I am now. It's not fake. It's not delusional. It's how behavioral psychology actually works. We don't act because of who we are. We become who we are because of how we act. Your brain is constantly looking for patterns to reinforce. So if your actions are aligned with your goals, even when your feelings aren't, you start shifting your self-image. You stop saying, I hope I can do this, and you start thinking, this is just what I do. And when something becomes part of your identity, motivation becomes irrelevant. Think about the difference between someone who says, I'm trying to quit smoking, and someone who says, I'm not a smoker. One is still debating with their old self. The other has cut the cord. They've claimed a new identity. And sure, there might still be cravings or urges or hard days, but the decision is already made. And that identity becomes the compass that guides the action, not the mood of the moment. So stop asking yourself how you feel. That question is useless half the time. Instead, ask, what would the person I want to be do right now? And then, this is the important part, do it. Not perfectly, not heroically. Just do it well enough to take one more step in the right direction. That's how you build proof. That's how you change. Not all at once, but irreversibly. This isn't about faking it. It's about practicing it, over and over, until it's no longer a stretch to believe you are who you say you are. Because by then, you've already proven it. If you take nothing else from this whole essay, remember this. You don't rise to the level of your motivation. You fall to the level of your systems. And most people don't have any. They rely entirely on how they feel. They wake up, check in with their emotions, and let those feelings decide what gets done. It's no wonder they're stuck. It's no wonder everything feels hard, because they've built their entire life on emotional sand. And when the tide comes in, it all collapses. Systems are different. Systems are not exciting. They are not glamorous. No one posts them on Instagram. But they're what separates people who actually move forward from those who just talk about it. Systems don't care if you feel like it. They're not influenced by your mood, your stress level, or how dramatic your day has been. A good system asks only one question. Did you do the thing? Not perfectly, just consistently. Think about brushing your teeth. You probably don't feel motivated to do it. You just do it because it's a habit. Un non negociable. You don't need a quote, a podcast, or a vision board to get yourself to brush your damn teeth. You've tied that action to your identity. I'm a person who doesn't walk around with disgusting breath, and now it happens day after day. What if everything that matters in your life was treated that way? Writing, training, eating, showing up for people, doing the hard things. What if they were automatic? Not because they're easy, but because they're expected. This is where so many people go wrong. They set goals, but they never build systems. They get inspired, but they never design behavior. They want to get in shape without setting a daily time and place for movement. They want to be more productive without creating a repeatable workflow. They want to be happier without defining what actions contribute to their mental health. And then they wonder why nothing sticks. The people who aren't more talented, more motivated, or more spiritually aligned. They've just stopped letting emotion run the show. They build a machine, a system of small daily actions that keeps working, even when they don't want to. Especially when they don't want to. And eventually, that system becomes them. That consistency compounds into results. That discipline builds momentum. And that identity solidifies until they wake up one day and realize, this isn't hard anymore. This is just who I am now. That's the real message here. Not that motivation is bad, but that it's optional, temporary, untrustworthy. If it's there, great. Use it. If it's not, don't wait for it. Build systems instead. Build habits. Build patterns. Build a life that doesn't ask your feelings for permission. The point isn't to feel inspired. The point is to understand that inspiration is irrelevant. Motivation is nice, but it's not necessary. What is necessary? A standard, a non-negotiable identity, a system, a commitment to action that doesn't ask how you feel, but reminds you who you are. That's where change lives. Not in emotional waves, but in steady decisions. Not in fireworks, but in friction. Not in high-energy mornings, but in low-energy nights where you still get the work done. That's where you win. Not when you feel like it, but when you don't and you do it anyway. If you need motivation, you're already losing, not because motivation is bad, but because waiting for it means you've given up control. But you don't have to. You can take it back. Right now. Not with a rush of emotion, but with one decision, one action, one ordinary, unimpressive step forward, and then another, and another, until one day, you realize you didn't need motivation after all. You just needed to move.